Hey y'all, welcome back to Fruit Friday. I'm your host Maddie or Yajai and Tai, and today we are talking all about going home for the first time and all the times after that when you live abroad and the reverse culture shock and the changing relationships that you might experience once you're there. But first, this is Fruit Friday, of course, so let's talk about our fruit. This week's fruit is blueberries, and blueberries I'm pretty sure are not grown in Thailand. I think all of the blueberries here are imported. They're usually quite large and firm. They're not super juicy, a little bit on the sour side, but I am a huge fan of berries, so whenever I can get my hands on them, I always enjoy them. And as a born and raised Midwest girl, I always look forward to being able to eat fresh berries whenever I go back to Minnesota, especially in the summers, because there's truly nothing better than fresh blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries. They're so sweet, they're so juicy, they are so delicious, and you just can't get that here. And this ties into the topic for today because I think we always have things that we really look forward to when we are going to travel home, but we don't always think about the challenges that we're going to face when we get there. Sometimes there can be things that you didn't expect would challenge you in ways that they do because after you've been gone and after you've seen a different way of life, you come back and you realize what you thought was normal at one point is no longer normal at all. There's also challenges around changing relationships, changing friendships, as we touched on last week, and we'll dive in more today. And sometimes the longer you spend at home, the more you realize why you left in the first place. So, all that said, let's dive into the discussion for today.
It's Fruit Friday, yeah, let's take a bite. Life's sweet and sour, take it slice by slice. Humor, heart, and wisdom, served just right. Laughing, learning, loving too. Fruit Friday's here with the juice for you.
So, as per usual, let's kick off this episode with a story because I want to tell you about the very first time I went home after moving to Thailand back in 2019. So as some of you may know, I originally planned to come to Thailand just for 1 year to teach as kind of a gap year, and then I was going to go back to the US and get my master's degree, start the rest of my life. And unexpectedly, I ended up getting stuck in Thailand for almost 2 years because of the pandemic, because they closed all the borders down, they weren't letting anyone in or out of the country, and I just decided to stay put here rather than going back to the US, which I'm so glad that I did. But in 2021, Thailand announced that they were going to begin reopening the borders, but they were going to do it with some controls around it. So their deal was you could come to Thailand, but you had to quarantine for 2 weeks on one of the islands. So you could quarantine on Phuket or Samui or in Bangkok. And this was a 2 week quarantine. You were allowed to leave your hotel after the first 24 hours, but you weren't allowed to leave the island until 2 weeks had passed and you had tested negative for COVID. So they called this the Sandbox program. And I was really excited by this because I thought, okay, finally I have an opportunity to go back to the US, visit my family, and then I'll be able to come back without any issues and continue with my life here. So when they announced this, I got really excited and I thought, okay, I'm going to go home. But because it was kind of a spur of the moment, last minute decision, I thought, you know what, instead of telling everyone I'm going to come back, I'm just going to surprise them. So I ended up booking my flights. I just arranged this with my sister and a couple of my friends. I booked my flights to Ohio, where my sister was living at the time. She picked me up from the airport. I spent the weekend with her and her roommates, and it was so fun to reconnect. And then I took her car and drove it 10 hours home to Minnesota, where none of my family knew that I was coming. So it was actually Father's Day weekend, and I wanted to surprise my dad as a Father's Day gift because it was just perfect timing. So I knew they would be gone that morning for church, so I timed my drive to be arriving like 15 minutes before I knew they would get home. And I made a little scavenger hunt in our house. So the first clue was on the door, and then it took him to the grill where I left one of his gifts, and then this clue on the grill took him to the basement fridge where I left another one of his gifts, and in the basement fridge he got a clue to go down to his mom's house, my grandma's house, which is just down the road from where my parents live. And I was hiding down there in my grandma's house. Unfortunately, my grandma wasn't home yet, but I got to surprise her later. And when my parents came in the house, I was there, and they were shocked to see me and so happy to see me, and I was so happy to see them, and they were freaking out, and it was just the cutest, sweetest thing. And such a wholesome moment. And it was fun because I got to continue these surprises again with maybe 3 or 4 other people. I surprised my grandma later that day. And then in the following days and weeks, I was able to surprise a few of my closest friends when I went back up to Minneapolis, and again, arranged with a few people that knew I was home to surprise them. And it was just such a fun memory and a fun way to come home for the first time, because obviously no one knew that I was going to be there, but everyone was so happy to see me. And it was just such an exciting way to come home. So still to this day, probably one of my favorite trips home, one of my favorite visits, just because it was filled with so much joy and love and reconnection. But let's talk about visiting home, because I don't think every visit is always equal. Not all visits feel the same. Some feel really exciting and filled with joy and love, and some of them feel challenging. Some of them can be sad. There can be all types of different visits. So let's run through a few different types of visits that you might experience in a life abroad. So like I mentioned in my story, we have surprise visits, at least surprise visits for the people that you're going home to surprise. And I do recommend that if you have the opportunity, you should do at least one surprise visit in your life, because like I said, it's so much fun. And the good thing about surprise visits is they are always so fun and exciting and heartwarming, I think, because it usually is like a really special thing that you're coming home for, and it's really meaningful that you made the effort, and it's just so nice to connect with everyone. Downside to a surprise visit is it's obviously hard to make plans with people, because if people don't know you're coming and you don't really have a way to ask their schedules without giving away that you're going to be there, it can be kind of difficult to see everyone that you want to see or do everything you want to do if you're not able to make plans in advance. On the flip side of that, there's also surprise visits for you when you unexpectedly have to travel home for circumstances that were unforeseen. These can often be for not so fun situations, either maybe a death in your family or friends, maybe a medical emergency, maybe a natural disaster, something that is calling you home for some reason, or maybe you're having an issue in the place that you're in and you have to kind of have an emergency leaving. Maybe you're having a medical issue or a mental health issue or whatever the issue is. Sometimes we get pulled home for reasons that we didn't expect. And these can often be challenging just physically and mentally and emotionally for us, because like I said, the circumstances are not always ideal. But I do think the silver lining in these situations is it really forces you to be present and to exist in each moment and just like take it in and experience it. I think sometimes when we try to rush our visits home, we can kind of miss out on those moments of like presence and true connection. And even if it's not a surprise or unexpected visit home, I think that you can relate to this if you've ever had a visit that was a little bit too short. Short visits are great because they're short and sweet. You get in, you get out, you do all the things you wanted to do, none of the things you don't want to do. But sometimes it can feel like you are just checking off boxes on a list and you're not actually being able to enjoy quality time with people or make the most of every moment that you have. When your visits are too short, especially if it's just, 1 or 2 weeks, you feel like you're cramming everyone into a schedule. And then instead of being able to sit down and connect with people and really enjoy your time authentically, it feels like you're trying to do breakfast with one person, coffee with another, lunch with someone else, dinner with someone else, and you're just racing around, exhausting yourself without really being able to enjoy and relax into your time at home. And on the flip side of that, we have extended visits that last a long time. These could be 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it is. Extended visits are great because you're able to be a little bit more spontaneous with your plans. You can kind of settle into a routine at home. You can be present and enjoy multiple meetings with people rather than just seeing them once and then leaving and then not seeing them again for however long you're gone. And extended visits can be nice when you just kind of need a reset. You need to touch ground. You need to hug your mom and your dad. You need to regroup, reset before you go back to something. And extended visits are really nice for that, especially if you have a comfortable place to go back to spend some time. But I will say that extended visits can make you start to feel restless. They can start to challenge you in multiple ways. They start to remind you why you left in the first place and what you don't like about this place. They can kind of make you feel like you're stagnant, like you're floating in kind of a purgatory space, if you will, like you've pulled out of your normal routine and now you're kind of in a new routine, but it's not a permanent routine. So you feel like you're just not progressing. You're just kind of stagnant in this visiting home space, which can be a challenge. And sometimes these extended visits can make you start to feel desperate to leave. Like you're like, get me out of here. And you start feeling resentful or negatively towards the space that you're visiting. And that's never a good feeling either, because I feel like you don't want to be home for so long that you start to wish that you weren't there anymore. So, as someone who has lived abroad for almost 7 years now, I have determined that the sweet spot for visits for me is 6 weeks. I think 6 weeks is the perfect amount of time to go home, to be present, to do all the things you want to do, to be able to kind of relax into your trip, establish a little routine without feeling too rushed, but also you're not staying quite long enough to feel restless, to feel anxious, to be desperate to get out of there. So you get in, you do all the things you want to do, you feel like you've maxed out on quality time with everyone without feeling like you're forcing it or rushing it or having to cut things short with anyone, and then you get out before the negative feelings start to creep in. Because honestly, it's crazy, but after that 6 week mark, it's almost like clockwork. Things flip like that and they can start to get really challenging. Which brings me into my next point, the challenges and the reverse culture shocks that you experience when you go back to your home country after you've been living abroad. And I think this is funny because people ask me quite often what were the biggest culture shocks when I moved to Thailand, or the most challenging things to adapt to. And while, yes, there were things, and maybe there's more that I am not thinking of when I think back because I'm so comfortable here now, I feel like the bigger challenge for me has always been going back to the US and adjusting to the lifestyle and the culture there. Because when I moved to Thailand, I was expecting everything to be different. I was like, I'm going into a completely new world, uncharted territory for me, somewhere I've never been, where the culture and the language and the food and the lifestyle and everything is just so different that I was so prepared to be shocked that it wasn't unsettling to me, if that makes sense. It's almost like when you have no expectations, you can't be surprised because it's just like, wow, look at this thing in front of me. And like, I had no idea what to expect. And so here it is. And so it's less jarring. But I feel like when you go home to a place that you felt like you were really familiar with and very comfortable with, sometimes you see it in a completely new light because you've been gone for long enough and you've started to live in a different way or experience the world in a different way. And then when you come back, things that were once normal to you, things that were once part of your routine, can now become really shocking, really challenging, really unsettling, all of that. So let's run through a list of some of the things that have challenged me, that have shocked me, that have been difficult for me when I returned back to the US as an American who hasn't lived in America for 7 years. I made a list. Number 1, toilets. There are no bidets in the US, at least not as the standard, and you flush the toilet paper there. And I think anyone who has lived in Asia, in Thailand, in a place where they use the bum guns and they don't flush the toilet paper, you can all relate to the moment where you're sitting on the toilet, you wipe, and then you have a moment where you don't know what to do with the toilet paper. You're like, throw it in the trash, in the toilet, in the trash, in the toilet, and you can't really remember. That is always, it takes me like a week to get it right. And even then I feel gross, like not using a bidet to clean myself off. It just feels dirty. So that's always a challenge for me. And I'm always so relieved to get back to Thailand and have that because once you have the bum gun, you really can't go back. Number 2, pumping your own gas. In Thailand, they pump your gas for you, and I've just gotten so used to that. And I kid you not, the first time I went back to the US, I pulled into a gas station and I sat in my car at the gas pump for 5 whole minutes before I remembered that I had to get out of the car and do it myself. Like I was just waiting for a gas station attendant to come and do it for me. And then I was like, oh yeah, they don't do that here. I have to do it myself. And I just think that's weird. I don't know. I mean, it's nice to have someone do that for you. So that's something that surprised me, that I wasn't expecting to be surprised by. Number 3, driving on the right side of the road. This seems like it should be something you could adjust to quite easily, but when there is not a lot of traffic on the road and you're just getting into a vehicle and the road is open, it's so confusing to me to remember which side I'm supposed to be driving on. And I remember one time I went to visit one of my friends and I left her house and she lived kind of out in the country. And so I was driving back and I was driving on the road, not thinking anything of it, and there was these runners coming in the opposite direction, and they kind of waved to me, and I waved back, and I was like, oh, that's nice that they waved to me. And then I drove a little bit farther and realized that I was in the wrong lane. I was driving on the wrong side of the road, and another car was coming in front of me, and then they start flashing their lights and honking at me, and I realized, like, oh, the runners had waved to me because they were thanking me for, like, moving way out of their way. Really, I was just driving on the wrong side of the road, so had to swerve back in. Thankfully, this hasn't been too big of an issue for me, and it hasn't been dangerous, so touch wood. Where's the wood? Yeah. But that is always something that it takes me a minute to adjust to. Next up, we have the prices. Okay, I'm going to try hard not to dwell on this because the US economy and the Thai economy are extremely different, as are the minimum wages and the average salaries and everything. But it always baffles me just how expensive the most simple things in the US are. And this goes for many countries. It's not just the US, but because I always go back to the US after living in Thailand, it's always like it hurts paying so much for things, because it's not like the prices double or triple. It's like the prices times 6, times 10, times 20 for some things. It's just absolute insanity. Things like going out to eat with friends, getting a massage, getting my nails done. I can't afford it in the US. It's outrageously expensive, and I feel like the prices are gouged a little bit. Again, I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but like if I want to get my hair done in a salon, I can get my hair done in Thailand for less than $30. I go to the US and people want to charge me $200 plus. No, I'm sorry. It's not right. Again, that's not the case everywhere. I'm not going to get too much into that, but like the prices, shocking every time. Next up, reservation culture. Oh my God, this drives me nuts every time. Most of the time when I go home, I spend most of the time at my parents' house, which is in the country, rural Minnesota. But sometimes on the weekends, I'll drive up to Minneapolis, St. Paul, where a lot of my friends live, because that's where I went to college, and I'll want to text them, meet up with them, get dinner, whatever. And it's hard for me to plan these things super far in advance because I never know exactly what my schedule's going to like when I come home, and when my mom's going to want to go to see her parents, and when I'm going to have other events coming up, family obligations, whatever. So I don't always have time to plan weeks and weeks in advance, but I do always reach out to my friends when I go back to Minneapolis and say like, hey, I'm in town for the weekend. What do you want to do? And there are so many cute new restaurants that are always popping up there. So I always have a list of places that I want to try when I go back. But whenever I ask my friends if they want to go to a place, they're like, yeah, but do you have a reservation? Because like if you don't have a reservation, we can't get in. And I always forget about this, and it drives me so crazy because I'm like, why do I have to know what I'm going to want to have for dinner 2 weeks from now? It's not even like a reserve today for tomorrow. It's literally reserved weeks in advance. And then it just feels like I have to commit to so many things that I'm unsure about so far in advance. I really hate that. And I think this kind of creeps into like people's lives as well. It feels like because so many things are requiring a reservation, requiring advanced planning, people start to live like that too. And so in the same way that I have to book a restaurant weeks in advance, I have to sometimes book time with my friends weeks in advance. And this is no hate to them, and I get that's just how they structure their lives, but it's crazy to me how I could text someone in July and say, hey, I'll be home August, September, October. And they're like, oh yeah, I have one free day in those 3 months because all of my weekends are already booked and I'm working Monday to Friday and I have no flexibility. And I'm just like, oh my God, I really have to plan so far in advance and be so on top of it if I want to connect with these people, because the way that people structure their lives and the way people book things like so far in advance, it just leaves little room for spontaneity. So that I feel like is a challenge for me, especially coming from Thailand and Samui in particular, where everything's Sabai island time. Schedules are flexible. People are flexible. We don't really have to make a bunch of advanced plans. Next, and this one sends me into a bit of a spiral. So forgive me, Lord, for I am about to step on my soapbox. But diet culture in the US. I thought we had left that in the early 2000s, but no, it's back. It's stronger than ever, I would say. And I really, really, really struggle with this. So I'm going to tell you a story. I was at my friend's house last time I was home. This was a year ago. We were watching a series on Hulu. And if you're familiar with streaming platforms, a lot of them have ads in the middle of episodes. So they'll stop you halfway through, they'll show you a targeted ad, and who knows what it's going to be, right? And mind you, I'm coming from Thailand, where the targeted ads are for laundry detergent and iced tea. Tell me why the targeted ads in the middle of this series on Hulu were for GLP-1s. Weight loss drugs. They are advertising weight loss drugs to households on streaming platforms. Do you understand how fucked up that is? Sorry, excuse my language, but that is so outrageous. I was beside myself when this happened. And what really like made me more upset was that no one else batted an eye. I was like looking to my left and to my right at my friends like, what the are they seriously advertising this on TV? And they were just like, yeah, like what? Like what's weird about it? Oh my god, you guys. I spiraled. I need to calm down because I'm getting upset just thinking about it. But honestly, we should not be marketing drugs, period. Like, drugs should not be something that we're advertising on TV, okay? Drugs are great. Modern medicine is great. We have it for a reason, and it can be helpful in situations where it's necessary, but that is not something that you capitalize on. That's not something that you show in a household where you're not sure who is going to be subject to seeing it, because we know the damage that these like weight loss and diet culture campaigns have on younger generations. I've been a victim of it, and so this is why it really strikes home for me. But like, that is so messed up. And here's what I'll say about GLP-1s. I think that weight loss drugs are great for people who desperately need it to make a change in their life. For people who are morbidly obese, who cannot stand or walk or exercise on their own because they are so overweight that they physically can't move, a weight loss drug it will change their life, okay? Allowing them to lose enough weight to be able to start to be active again and to change their lifestyle and their habits. In those cases, by all means, use the weight loss drugs. But for normal people, just as a way to get slim faster, no, enough of that. Like, we do not need that. That is not healthy. Like, to just rapidly lose a bunch of weight and then try to wean yourself off a drug that's more than likely going to make you gain it all back once you're off of it. Like, we should be preaching lifestyle changes and sustainable habits and healthy foods and, you know, things like that, not just inject yourself with this drug every week and then you'll lose a bunch of weight and then you'll be skinny and then problem solved, because it just creates this yo-yo effect more often than not. And okay, I'm gonna stop there because I will go off on a tangent, but oh my god, it's such a challenge for me to see that it really gets under my skin. On a related note, I think something else that I struggle with when I get home, and something that contributes to that problem, is the food quality in the US. And growing up in the US, obviously I ate the food that was there because what other choice did I have? And I was used to it because I had been living there for so long. But after moving to Thailand and living in Asia, eating a lot of freshly made food, whole foods, not a lot of preservatives, I got so sick the first time I went back to the US and started eating processed foods again. And I'm not even like a big junk food eater. I don't eat fast food, but even eating things like cereal or granola bars sent my stomach, like flipped it upside down in a spiral. I was unwell. And that's something that I really struggle with and that shocks me, is just like how many preservatives and artificial sweeteners and food colorings are in food in the US. And that just goes completely, like, people are completely unbothered by it. And it's just part of the normal routine, normal grocery haul, normal thing that people feed their kids. And that shocks me when I come home and see that, because there's so much junk in the food in the US. And also the portion sizes are so huge. I can eat a lot, okay? I love to eat. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that. But the portions in the US are like 2 meals in one. And I'm like, no wonder we have an obesity epidemic, because people are just eating so much food and a lot of it is really not great quality. And it's just contributing to these problems that instead of solving, we're trying to just like market drugs to people. But anyway, I digress. Something else completely different that I struggle with is going into big box stores. I used to love going to Target. Target used to be an activity that I would do with my friends. We would go to Target, we would wander around, we would look at everything. It was fun. Now? No. Going into Target is my worst nightmare. The second I step inside, my heart rate spikes. I have a sense of existential dread just washing over me, and I am overwhelmed and frankly disgusted by the amount of things in the store. I feel like overconsumption in the US is outrageous, and there are just too many things that people are buying for no reason. Like, why do we need to buy so many useless things for our homes? Why are there a bajillion options of every single thing? Why aren't there just a few good basics? This is something that's just like, it's a strong juxtaposition for me, because when I go to Thailand, if I'm shopping here, I go to the local market. There are 3 vegetable stands, a couple meat stands, a couple stands where I can get sugar, salt, curry paste, whatever, and that's it. That's it. I don't even go to Lotus and Macro here unless I absolutely have to, because the same thing applies. But oh God, it's another level when you go into a Target or a Costco or a Walmart or wherever it is. There's just too much. And especially if I go out of the grocery section and I'm walking through like the home decor or the greeting cards, it's just like, oh, my skin crawls. I'm like, why is there so much stuff, and who is buying this? And oh my God, seriously, like, we've had enough live, laugh, love. You're not living and laughing and loving anymore. You're not grateful, thankful, or blessed, okay? Unless you're buying a sign that says grumpy, tired, and burnt out, I'm not believing you, so don't put it in your house. Another thing, the last time I went into Target, again, I was shocked to see, and this is, again, something that was completely normal to me before, that you can purchase 500 paracetamol tablets in a bottle. You can just buy a bottle of Tylenol with 500, sometimes even 1,000 tablets in one. Again, do you know how outrageous that is? That is enough paracetamol to kill me 50 times. Like, not to be dramatic, but that is an outrageous amount of painkillers, and something that would take hopefully years to get through. And the fact that you could just buy it all at once is crazy to me. Now that I've lived in Thailand, where you want paracetamol, you buy it at 7-Eleven in a sachet with 5 or maybe 10 max. That's it. And that's fine. That's more than enough. I take 2 or 3, and that, like, the 10 pills last me a whole year. So the fact that you can just buy 500, 1,000 tablets in one go is absolutely crazy to me. And again, something that was completely normal for all my life, and I never blinked twice at the thought of it, but now stops me in my tracks. And it's funny because I feel like the pharmaceutical industry in general is strange and challenging, because you can do something like that. You can buy 500 painkillers, but when you need any sort of prescription medicine, it is such a hassle to get it. You have to meet with your doctor, and the doctor has to write a prescription, and then you have to take the prescription to the pharmacy and get the prescription filled. And I feel like as adults, we know what ailments we're susceptible to, what conditions we're living with, and what drugs we need to treat them. And I think within reason, we should be able to just go to the pharmacy and ask for that in, again, like a reasonable size dose and a reasonable frequency, but we shouldn't have to go through all these hoops just to get like a medication that we need to keep us healthy, keep us functioning. And again, this is something I've gotten really used to in Thailand. If there are medications that I need for something that I'm struggling with, be it like, a rash or a skin fungal infection or a virus or whatever, I can just go to the pharmacy and say like, hey, I have this problem. Can I have, a round of antibiotics or a round of antifungals or whatever? And they just hand it over, no questions asked. And yeah, going back to the US and having to go through the trouble of like all the steps of the medical system, it's crazy. And last one, I promise, but the medical system also a challenge when I go home. Challenging for me. I feel like I'm just on a rant right now, so forgive me. Thank you if you're listening. But let me tell you one more story, and then I promise we're going to change the topic. The medical system in the US. So let me just paint you 2 different pictures, okay? One time, when I had first moved to Thailand, I was out for a run, and after my run, I tripped and fell off the curb. I really, really twisted my ankle, could barely walk on it. It was super swollen, super bruised, and I was like, something is not right here. I drove to the hospital. I had an initial consultation, got all my vitals checked, met with the doctor. Doctor sent me for an x-ray. I had the x-ray. I came back, saw the doctor again, reviewed the x-ray, told me nothing was broken. He gave me my painkillers, whatever, sent me on my way. All of this in less than 90 minutes. I want to say less than an hour, and cost me less than $200 without insurance. Okay. That was just like out of pocket, less than 200, and my insurance was able to cover some of that. So I got some of it back, but like, great. No issues. Seeing a doctor in the US, especially if you need to see a specialist, and especially if you need some sort of treatment, is such a long and expensive and drawn out process. And it's no wonder that so many people just live with issues for their whole life or can't get the care that they need. As some of you might know, I suffered a shoulder injury while I was sparring Muay Thai in Thailand, and I ended up having to go home to get it treated. I didn't have to go home to treat it, but I had insurance coverage there, and I just trusted the medical care a little bit more there because I was familiar with it, and it was a hospital that I've been going to my whole life. So when it came to having surgery, I just wanted to be somewhere that I like really felt confident. So anyway, I knew that I had messed up my shoulder in Thailand. I felt the moment that it happened that something tore and that I would need surgery. I got x-rays in Thailand. They told me nothing was broken. I was like, I don't think anything is broken in the bones, but there's something wrong with the muscle, the tissue. And they were like, muscle relaxer, painkiller, send you on your way. I go home to the US. I first have to have an initial consultation with my doctor. I tell my doctor in the initial consultation, I'm like, I need an MRI. Something is torn. I need to have surgery. And they were like, yeah, okay, like let's do an x-ray. Let's see. They refer me to ortho. So I go to see an orthopedic specialist. They take a look at me. They're like, yeah, let's do an x-ray. I'm like, x-ray is not going to show anything. I need an MRI. They were like, no, x-ray first. So they send me to get an x-ray. A couple weeks later, I'm able to review the x-ray with the doctor. They say nothing's broken. They prescribe me physical therapy. And I'm like, I don't think physical therapy is going to do it. Something tore. I need an MRI. They're like, no, physical therapy will work. So I do 6 weeks of physical therapy, and I'm not getting any better. And I'm telling them, like, this is great. My shoulder is getting stronger again, but I'm still feeling pain. I'm still feeling unstable. Something's not right. So then the orthopedic specialist prescribes me a steroid injection. He's like, this will take care of it. No worries. So I get the steroid injection. Nothing happens. I continue with my PT. I tell him that it's still not helping. He prescribes a higher dose of the steroid injection. He's like, this will for sure work. So then I get another round of steroid injections at a higher dose, and lo and behold, I'm still feeling pain. I'm still feeling unstable. And I tell them that. I'm like, it still doesn't feel right. I think that this isn't helping. And then finally, after this, we're like 2 months in now, he's like, okay, let's do an MRI and see. So they order the MRI. I go in the next week for the MRI, get the MRI results back, and they're like, oh yeah, your labrum is extremely torn and it will need surgery to repair. I'm like, yeah, I said that from the very beginning. I knew that the moment that it happened, that was going to be the response, but we have to go conservative route first. Whatever, I get it, insurance, blah, blah, blah. Just the shoulder surgery alone, not counting all of the treatments before that, $40,000. Thankfully, my insurance covered it, so I didn't have to pay for it. But like the difference in prices and the difference in like the processes and the steps to get to it. Oh my God. Okay. Thank you for listening to that. I think maybe that was more for me than for you. But yeah, just those are some examples of things that I have struggled with going back to the US, culture shocks I have experienced, and definitely have been like more challenging for me than coming to Asia and learning how to eat spicy food or accepting kids on motorbikes without helmets. Like, you want to talk culture shocks, talk about going back to the US after not living there for 6 years and trying to convince yourself that anything going on there is normal. End scene. Okay, now, but to be fair, before we move on, I feel like I just shit on the US in a lot of ways. I don't hate everything about the US. I think there are a lot of great things about it there too. It's a beautiful country. There are so many cool places to explore. There are so many cool cities and interesting arts and cultures. And I love where I'm from. I would never change where I'm from. Minnesota is a beautiful state. It has amazingly kind people, and I just love it. I love Minnesota, and it always will be part of me. And if I could just like say 10 things that I like about it, that I like about going home, I love drinking from the tap. I love to go home and turn on the tap and then drink a whole glass of it. I've never been more hydrated than when I'm at home. I love farmers markets and the fresh berries and fruits and peaches and kale and vegetables and all of the delicious things that are homegrown right there. A lot of things that you don't necessarily get all the time in Thailand. I love that there are beautiful public parks that have really nice pathways that you can rollerblade on, that you can bicycle on, that are community spaces where you can gather. There are outdoor community events, especially in the summers, that you can enjoy because the weather is mild enough that you can just be outside the whole day without being miserably hot. I love going to stores that sell shoes and bras in my size. That is something I really struggle with when I'm in Asia. So that's something I always look forward to. And obviously I just love my friends and my family there, and I always look forward to reconnecting with them, spending time with them. And because home is not only a place but people, it's always a place that I'll be grateful to come back to. But on the topic of friends and family, let's talk about how to navigate changing relationships as you start to kind of drift away from people that you left in your home country. Because I think sometimes we can blame ourselves and shame ourselves into feeling really guilty about these relationships changing, because we'd say that we're the ones that left, and if we wouldn't have left, then things wouldn't have happened this way. And while it is easy to jump to that conclusion and it is easy to feel bad about that, I think there are a lot of reasons this happens, and a lot of them are like scientifically proven and biological, and it's not something that's our fault. It's just a natural phenomenon. And so I want to talk about that, because something that I've noticed in my trips home is every time I go home, the number of people that I want to see and that I do see shrinks. The first time I went home, I wanted to reconnect with like 50 people. Okay. I had so many friends that I wanted to see, events I wanted to attend, group gatherings I wanted to either attend or host, because I just wanted to see so many people. I had to reconnect with so many friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. And it felt like I still was close enough to them that it was meaningful for me to reconnect, catch up with them, learn what's happening in their lives, and catch them up on what's happening in mine. And every time I've gone home, that number has gotten less and less. You know, the second time I went home, instead of 50 people I wanted to connect with, it was 25. And the third time I went home, instead of 25 people I wanted to connect with, it was 15. And now when I go home, I really focus on connecting with my family and a handful of really close friends, and anyone else beyond that is a bonus, and I'm open to it, but it's not something that I prioritize. And I think this is a natural phenomenon and something that can be explained by psychology. So let's jump into a little bit of Dunbar's number, if you're familiar with this. So Dunbar's number is this principle or this explanation as to how many relationships we are able to maintain as humans. And in the biggest, most outer circles, we are able to recognize 1,500 faces and be acquainted with 500 people. So remember their name, associate them with a place, like acquaintances. Lower than that, or within that circle, we are able to maintain 150 casual friendships. So people that, again, we know their name, we can follow a little bit of their life story, we can track our relationships with them. But it's not like a super deep connection. It's just like, again, friends, casual friends. Within that circle, we're able to maintain 50 good friends. So people that we see or catch up with on a semi-regular basis, we are in the know about what's happening in their lives, and we do care to stay in touch to a certain extent, but we are not communicating every single day, every single week. But we still have this friendship that is outstanding, long-standing. Within those 50 people, there are only about 15 that you can really maintain like a sympathetic relationship with, where you're going to be there for them if something is challenging them in their life. They are someone that you might reach out to if you're struggling with something in your life, and someone that you would consider like a really close friend. And then within that, there are only like 5 seats in our most intimate, closest circle. And this can be made up by family, friends, partner, but we're really limited to the number of people that we can maintain a very deep emotional bond with. And oftentimes he even hypothesizes that a partner takes up 2 of those seats because they play so many roles in our life. So when you think about it this way, when you lived in your home country, you definitely had like your closest inner circle and then your immediate, outer circle. And when you move abroad, as we've talked about, you hopefully are making new friends and forming new connections. And if you're someone who's looking for community in this new place, like it would be my hope and my guess that you're going to find like a new closest friend and a new inner circle, because it's just the people that you spend the most time with. And we develop relationships with people that we're able to see consistently. And unfortunately, when new people enter these inner circles, naturally the people that were in those seats before kind of move out. They move farther away from us. And that's not to say that you're a bad person or a bad friend. It's just the reality. That's how human connection works. We can only maintain so many of these relationships. And it doesn't mean that you stopped caring about someone, or you don't like someone anymore, or you don't want to be their friend. It's a natural drift. It's a natural phenomenon that happens. And sometimes people that you thought of as your best, closest friend become just a close friend. They become part of the 15, or maybe they just become a good friend and they're part of that 50. And this is something that can be really challenging and really hard, because I think it's really hard to say which friendships will last a lifetime and what those friendships will look like across a lifetime, because sometimes we think people are going to be like our best, closest friend forever. And then when we start to drift apart, it can hurt us and it can kind of break our hearts a little bit, because it's kind of like an amicable breakup when there's not really like a falling out or an event that tears you apart and makes you be able to like have negative feelings about a person and be like, ah, it's over. I don't like them anymore because of this thing. It's just like a sad, slow drift where you're just kind of like looking at something that used to be there and thinking, man, what happened? What could I have done different? Did I do something wrong? And like this person that I used to be so close with is now like not close with me anymore, and that's kind of sad. And I think in these cases there are a couple of ways that you can move forward. Number one, you can accept the natural drift and just make peace with the fact that not every relationship is going to be forever, and it's going to naturally change over time, and that's okay. And you can both just hold space for what was and accept what is and move forward with your lives. If it is someone that you feel like you've drifted from, that you really didn't want to drift from, and you want to bring back closer to you, you have to have an honest conversation with them. You have to speak to them about what you're feeling, about what the friendship was and what it is now and what you wish it would be, and talk about what ways that you can show up for them as a friend, what ways you'd like them to show up for you, and kind of redefine your friendship in a way that's going to allow you both to maintain it moving forward. Because just to give an example, someone who was your best friend when you were living in a place and you saw them every single day is not going to have the same relationship with you when you're living on the other side of the world, because they're not up to date with the day-to-day things. And we can't expect them always to stay up to date with the day-to-day things because they have their own day-to-day things that they need to now attend to, and you're just not there to share and experience them with them. So one way that I have seen and I have practiced working, staying in touch with friends from a distance, is sending like a monthly photo dump update and just letting people know what's been going on in your life through pictures. Another thing that one of my friends introduced me to is a concept called the Wednesday Waffle, where her friends and her all send a voice note on Wednesdays, just giving like a recap of the week, what's good, what's bad, what's challenging, what's funny, just to kind of stay in touch and to give people a sense of connection. And I think I want to point out why it's so important to have these direct conversations and connections, because I think social media gives a false sense of connectedness. And sometimes we think because we see what someone is posting, we are still connected to them and we're still caught up with them. But it's not the same, especially if you are not posting in the same capacity that someone else is posting. Because, you know, as someone who posts a lot on social media, who posts regularly, who posts almost daily, I feel like sometimes people feel a false sense of connection to me because they're like, I know everything that you're doing because you post about it, but I can't say the same for them because they don't post anything. And so even though they feel like they're still up to date on what's going on in my life, I don't feel the same. And like that can create an imbalance, that can create kind of a gap. And yeah, so those are the conversations you have to have. Like, how often do we need to stay in touch? What's a fun way that we can connect that doesn't feel like it's asking too much or not asking enough? Things like that. And I will say that I think the friendships that do stand the test of time and the best type of friendships to have are the ones that you can go weeks, months without speaking, and when you reconnect, it's like nothing, no time has passed. You know, you pick up right where you left off. There's a mutual understanding that you're each doing your own thing, you're each cheering each other on and hoping the best for that person, but you're not expecting or needing to be involved in every single day and every single update. But it's also this shared sense of knowing that like you're always going to be there to pick up the phone if they need you, you're always going to be there to celebrate their wins when they happen, you're always going to be there to comfort them. And those friends that fit into that category are so special. Hang on to them, cherish them, because it is such a lovely and refreshing feeling to know that there's always someone that you can come back to and reconnect with, and you're always going to have fun together. You're always going to be able to share life together, even if the way you're showing up for each other in different chapters looks different. And on that note, my friends, I am going to wrap up this episode with a little bit of fruit for thought. So I actually have two questions for you this week, two little pieces of fruit to chew on. The first one is, what reverse culture shocks do you need to prepare yourself for before your next trip home? Are there any like guards you need to put up, boundaries you need to set, things that you need to prepare yourself to deal with before you go home so that you're not thrown through a loop? For me, it's always like grounding into my physical routine, my exercise routine, my eating habits, and shielding myself from the the diet culture and the processed foods, as I've said, because I have struggled with eating disorders in the past, with diet culture in the past, and it's like just something that really triggers me. So it's something I have to be like, okay, not gonna let it bother me. Have to sage myself. That's the first question. What reverse culture shocks do you need to prepare yourself for or shield yourself for? And the second question is, what relationships with people at home would you like to redefine? So if you can pinpoint anyone in particular that you would like to reconnect with or redefine your relationship with to feel good about where you stand now, think about that, who it is, how you'd like to reach out to them, what you would like to say or ask to kind of bring them back a little bit closer if you've drifted apart. I want you to think about that this week, and then I want you to come back and join me next time, because next week we are going to be talking about how you deal with goodbyes being a constant part of your life as someone who is living abroad, and how to really be present in the moments that matter. Because I think that is an extremely important lesson and something that you really have to become a master at when you are living on the other side of the world. Thank you so much for tuning into Fruit Friday. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast, because I have enjoyed making it and I love sharing it with you. If you liked it, I would so appreciate it if you would follow us on whatever platform that you are streaming from. Like, comment, share it with a friend, share it on your stories. Anything that you can do to engage, I so appreciate it. And I'll see you back next week. Happy Friday.
Take one last bite of that juicy slice. Fruit for thought, sounding oh so nice. Human heart of wisdom, served just right. Laughing, learning, loving too. Fruit Friday's here with the juice for you.